Laziness does not arrive as weakness. It arrives as comfort, wearing the mask of permission. It speaks gently at dawn, telling you that tomorrow is safer than today. And each time you listen, something inside you grows quieter. There was once a young warrior who believed his fire had died. He did not call himself lazy. He called himself tired. Tired of beginning again. Tired of failing quietly. Tired of standing between the man he was and the man he promised to become. When he finally spoke to the old master, he asked for motivation, for rituals, for secrets of strength. The master answered with neither. He said only one sentence, soft as falling ash. You do not suffer from laziness. You suffer from division. Division between intention and action, between discipline and desire, between who you perform as in public and who you obey in private. In the ancient system of the samurai, laziness was never treated as an emotion. It was treated as a broken oath to the self, a collapse of presence, a slow erosion of the warrior's inner ground. And there existed one rule, simple in appearance, ruthless in effect. A rule that, when followed without negotiation for 7 days, would not only rebuild discipline, but expose whether the ego was ever honest about mastery. This is not a story about productivity. It is a story about identity. Not about habits, but about the moment your excuses begin to sound like strangers. And if something in your chest just tightened, remain. The path has already found you. He trained when it felt good. He rested when it felt easier. And every night, he promised tomorrow would be different. The dojo was quiet in the early hours, dust floating like unspoken questions in the pale light. The wooden floor held the memory of discipline, but his feet arrived late again. A red thread once tied to his wrist, a symbol of oath, now lay forgotten in a cracked drawer beside old training ledgers he no longer opened. He still spoke of destiny, of becoming something rare, yet his mornings belonged to hesitation. The mind told him he was preparing. The body knew he was avoiding. Modern science would later name it comfort bias. The old masters had a simpler word, self-betrayal. And the enemy did not look like failure. It looked like him. That morning, as he turned to leave early once again, he felt eyes on his back for the first time. The old master did not block his path. He did not raise his voice. He only asked one question, slow and precise, like a blade testing air. Who taught you to fear your own hunger? The warrior felt a tightening in his chest, as if a locked drawer inside him had been touched. He spoke of timing, of seasons, of waiting until he felt ready. The master listened, then traced a finger across a burned ledger on the wall, where the names of warriors who waited too long were carved without ceremony. Neuroscience would later say the brain seeks comfort over change. The ancients said the same thing with fewer words. The ego prefers a warm lie to a cold truth. In that silence, the warrior felt it clearly for the first time. He was not tired of effort. He was afraid of exposure, and fear, once seen without disguise, does not remain quiet for long. The master did not announce the rule. He placed it between them without ceremony, the way graves are placed beneath soil, quietly and forever. 7 days. No bargaining with the body, no permission from the mood. You rise as the warrior you claim to be, or you do not rise at all. The words were never spoken aloud, yet the warrior felt them land like iron inside his chest. His mind leapt forward with negotiations. What about exhaustion? What about tomorrow? What about after I feel ready? The ego began building escape routes before the first step was even taken. Modern science would later call this identity resistance. The ancients called it cowardice dressed as caution. The master only turned away, leaving behind silence and a rule that had already begun to tighten. That night, the warrior discovered that silence is louder than motivation. Sleep came in fragments. Each time his eyes closed, he saw the same image. A locked drawer inside his ribs, tapping from within. At dawn, the air felt heavier than usual. as if the mountain itself were watching. He reached for the usual delay, the familiar story of later, and found it empty. The rule did not argue. It waited. He stood in the cold, breath rising like steam from a confession, and felt the rare terror of choosing without comfort. Neuroscience would later say this was the moment the brain's prediction loop broke. The ancients named it more simply, the first crack in the ego. He stepped forward without emotion, and in that emotionless step, something irreversible began. Before the sun could climb, the war inside him had already declared its first open rebellion. The first morning did not feel like destiny. It felt like betrayal, of comfort, of routine, of the soft voice that had always promised him relief. His body rose before his will could negotiate. The floor was cold, the air tasted thin. Every joint argued as if pulled from sleep by force. By the second day, irritation replaced doubt. By the third, exhaustion learned how to speak his name. The ego did not attack with drama. It attacked with reason, with logical delay, with gentle sabotage. You have proven enough. You can rest now. No one will know. Modern science would call this the brain clinging to its old prediction loop. The ancients named it possession by the former self. Power did not arrive, only exposure. By the third night, the silence inside him began to feel dangerous. On the third evening, he noticed something stranger than fatigue. The noise had returned. Not from outside, but from within. Old memories knocked without invitation. Regrets stretched their legs. A forgotten failure replayed itself like a burned ledger reopened. The ego, cornered by action, had released its last defense. Emotional flooding. Neuroscience would later call this threat response. The ancients called it the soul testing the strength of its new wall. He sat alone in the dark, fingers tracing the red thread still tied to his wrist, now damp with sweat. For the first time in years, he did not escape the feeling. He stayed inside it. And somewhere in that unbearable stillness, boredom turned into hunger. By the fourth dawn, the war was no longer loud. It had learned to whisper. By the fourth morning, the struggle did not vanish. It changed its shape. The body still resisted, but the mind no longer pleaded. Movements became quieter, breath steadier. The noise that once filled every pause had begun to thin, like mist pulling back from stone. He trained without argument now, not from fire, not from desire, but from structure. The red thread on his wrist no longer felt like a reminder. It felt like a pulse. The master watched from a distance, saying nothing, because this phase could not be taught, only survived. Neuroscience would later explain this as neural stabilization. The ancients named it the return of presence. For the first time, discipline did not feel loud. It felt inevitable. And when action becomes inevitable, excuses grow desperate. On the fifth day, the strange clarity deepened. Distraction still tried to knock, but its hands felt weaker now. He noticed how often he used to move without being there. Now each step arrived with him inside it. The master finally spoke, tracing a slow circle in the dust with the end of his staff. "Force breaks," he said. "Rhythm bends." Modern science would say the habit loop had begun to rewire. The ancients would say the warrior's shadow had lost its grip. Even fatigue felt different, no longer a signal to retreat, but a texture of effort. The ego, quieter now, began to feel worried, because stability is dangerous to illusion. By the sixth sunrise, something within him would begin to mourn what it was about to lose. The sixth day did not arrive with resistance. It arrived with grief. Not loud grief, quiet grief, the kind that settles behind the eyes and changes the weight of breath. He moved through his training with steady precision, yet something inside him felt hollowed. The old version of himself, the one who delayed, drifted, negotiated with fear, had grown strangely distant, like a town seen across water. He could remember it, He could not return to it. The burned ledgers in the hall no longer frightened him. They saddened him. Nostalgia tried to dress itself as wisdom. The ego whispered, "Wasn't the old life easier?" Modern psychology calls this the identity vacuum. The ancients called it the mourning of the false self. By nightfall, the warrior would discover that loneliness and power share the same doorway. That night, the wind pushed softly against the paper walls, and for the first time, he did not reach for distraction. He sat in the quiet and felt how empty his former excuses now sounded. The habits that once protected him had lost their voice. Even rest felt unfamiliar without guilt attached to it. The master finally stood beside him and spoke the warning that ended many journeys. Most men abandon the path here, not because they are weak, but because they missed the lie that once kept them company. Neuroscience would say the old identity loop was collapsing. The ancients would say the spirit was being stripped of comforting noise. In that stripping, the warrior felt both lighter and terrifyingly alone. And in that loneliness, the seventh day was already sharpening its edge. The seventh day arrived without announcement. No thunder in the chest, no fire in the blood, only silence and movement. He rose before the thought of rising appeared. The floor was still cold, the air still thin, but the argument was gone. His body obeyed without needing permission from his mood. The red thread on his wrist had frayed into softness, no longer a reminder. Now a residue of promise kept. He trained without force. He rested without apology. The master watched and did not intervene, because this was the only proof that had ever mattered. Behavior without negotiation. Neuroscience would later say the identity loop had closed. The ancients would say something simpler. The warrior had returned to the body he once abandoned. And yet, the master had not revealed the final truth of the rule. Not yet. At dusk, the master finally spoke the truth the rule had been hiding. He did not praise the warrior. He did not name the change. He only said, "This rule never destroyed laziness. It only asked one question and waited for your behavior to answer." The warrior felt the quiet weight of that sentence settle into his bones. He understood now that discipline had never been something to summon. It was something to stand inside. The town beyond the dojo had not changed. People still delayed, still negotiated, still confused feeling with permission. But inside him, the burned ledgers had gone silent. The locked drawer no longer knocked. Presence had become non-negotiable. And yet, as he looked out into the dark, one unease remained. If discipline can arrive this quietly, what else has already changed without him noticing? Laziness is not defeated by force. It collapses when your presence becomes non-negotiable.